Now, either no worldview is correct or one worldview is correct. I recently heard the analogy that, it's a bit like maths. 2 plus 2 has one answer. Every other answer you give to 2 plus 2 is wrong. It's not a case of being offensive or being intolerant. There just is one answer. And in the same way, either every worldview is wrong and no one's got the right worldview at the moment, or someone does. There is a correct worldview which actually does explain reality properly. We live in a world where there is more access to information than ever before. Generations, young and old, are being exposed to radically different ideologies and opinions every day. It can be so overwhelming trying to decipher what's true and what's false. But there is a way. Join me as we discuss some of the toughest questions out there about Christianity, the Bible, and culture. I'm your host, Nick Lackey. Welcome to The Garrison. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Garrison. Thanks for joining me today. Before we get into the topic, I will mention again that if you guys have any questions or any comments you want to make about The Garrison, feel free to reach me on my email, which is thegarrisonpod@gmail.com. Now, with that out of the way, today's topic is actually going to be a two-parter. So you're listening to the first part of this two-parter, and it's going to be talking about worldviews and what is a worldview and why are they important, and how we can tell what worldview makes the most sense. And of course, we will be talking about Christianity as a worldview. And so to understand a worldview, let's get into it now. I want you to imagine a puzzle piece, or maybe even like a bagel. In fact, the other day I was making myself a bagel. I put it in the toaster, cooked it up, and then I wanted to spread some avocado on top. But the problem is when you're trying to spread something on top of a bagel, often what happens is the spread falls through the hole in the middle. Because a bagel, I see it as kind of like a semi-formed burger bun. It's just missing the hole in the middle. And this caused a problem because all the avocado I was trying to spread on top of it was kind of falling through the hole in the middle. And what would have been better would have been like a burger bun, right? Where it doesn't have a hole, it's fully formed, and it can fully achieve its purpose. So in the same way, a worldview is a bit like this. It's kind of got this outer ring. Now, maybe think of it more as a jigsaw puzzle. It's got this, but with only two pieces. It's got this outer ring, or this outer piece, which is, it represents reality. And then you've got this inner ring, and that's what we're trying to fill with our worldview. And every worldview is like a different puzzle piece, a puzzle piece which attempts to fill that hole. And within that puzzle piece, it's got different kind of edges to it, different bits that fill in parts of the whole. But only one puzzle piece will completely fill the whole of reality. A worldview is a view of the world which attempts to fit into this hole. Now, either no worldview is correct or one worldview is correct. I recently heard the analogy that, it's a bit like maths. 2 plus 2 has one answer. Every other answer you give to 2 plus 2 is wrong. It's not a case of being offensive or being intolerant. There just is one answer. And in the same way, either every worldview is wrong and no one's got the right worldview at the moment, or someone does. There is a correct worldview which actually does explain reality properly. Okay, so why is a worldview important? Well, everybody has a worldview. Whether you like it or not, you have some sort of vision of reality and the way that things are. And worldviews are important because they carry ideas about the world. They carry ideas about origins and identity and morality and purpose, which we'll get into in a second. And these ideas, they kind of shape how we live our life. Now, for example, within the Christian worldview, we believe that mankind or humans are made in the image of God. So that's the belief within the Christian worldview. And this gives us the value that human beings are valuable and murder is wrong. Therefore, it affects our behavior by saying, do not murder. You can see this kind of three-step process. We believe that humans are made in the image of God. This gives us the value that human beings are valuable and murder is wrong. Therefore, our behavior, number 3, is affected by saying do not murder, and Christians, therefore, should not murder. Now, in contrast, let's look at the naturalist worldview. This is the belief that everything in this universe is material. It's all that ever has been and ever will be. Okay, now within the naturalist worldview, they believe that humans are the result of millions of years of evolutions, just like every other living thing there is in this universe. So the value is that we have the same objective value as a swamp fly. Therefore, in our behavior, there's no difference morally as to how we treat a swamp fly as opposed to how we would treat a human. Therefore, the naturalist or atheist dictators such as Stalin and Hitler and Mao and Pol Pot, they commit genocide. Now, if you are listening, I'm not suggesting that all naturalists are out there to commit genocide. I'm not suggesting that all naturalists have this view of human life either. But to be consistent to their worldview, they can't insist that humans have any more objective value than that of a swamp fly. And when you're an atheist dictator like Stalin or Pol Pot, you don't really have any reason to believe that human life has value, and therefore you go and commit the atrocities that these people committed. Okay, so about this naturalist worldview, is it really the best one in terms of making decisions in our life? Because that's what we're talking about at the moment, how a worldview affects how we make decisions and how we live out our life. Now, not long ago, I posted a video about how sin is like a spider web, and we can get rid of spider webs, but as long as there's still a spider, the webs will reappear. Therefore, the problem is in the spider, not the web. Now, when we look and we see all the webs of sin in this world, we see corruption and wars and all this stuff, it's going to keep popping up over and over and over again because we're trying to deal with the spider web of war, whereas the real problem is our sinful nature. Okay, now I've posted a reel about that which goes into a wee bit more depth, but the point is, an atheist commented, this is what they said: religion has been the biggest problem in the world, best to be an atheist. Okay, now first of all, I agree, religion has been a problem in the world. I'm not denying that religions haven't caused any problems. Okay, they certainly have. But the statement at the end, it's best to be an atheist. Really? Is it best to be an atheist? Are you saying that it's best to live with no objective moral standard like Hitler did and Stalin and Pol Pot? I mean, that's the belief that's consistent with your worldview. If you're an atheist or a naturalist, there is no standard of morality. Is it really best to live that way? Now again, if you're an atheist and you're listening, I'm not saying you have no morals or anything like that. There are many atheists out there who have pretty decent morals even by God's standard, but the reason is because they have been created in the image of God with a conscience, with the law of God written on their hearts. That's what the Bible says. That's where our morality comes from. But the difference is there is just no justification for that morality. And dictators, like we've been talking about, like Stalin, Hitler, and Pol Pot, they came to the conclusion that if there is no God, then there must be no morality, therefore they can do what they want, and they do what is right in their own eyes. So the point here of the last 5 minutes of me rambling is our worldviews have real life consequences. And because ideas lead to behaviors have real life consequences, right? Now, John Stonestreet, he once said, ideas have consequences and bad ideas have victims. That's the reason why worldviews are important, because they shape how we make decisions in our life. They shape how we act. Okay, so with that being said, think about what worldview you currently hold. Maybe it's atheistic, or maybe it's Islamic, or Hindu, or Christian. Whatever the way is you view reality, think about why you hold that worldview. Is it because that worldview works best for you? Or is it because that worldview agrees with the way the world actually is? And here's a key point. We should be forming our worldview based on the way the world actually is, not on what's going to make us feel better, or not on whatever works best for us. In light of that, let's further break down what a worldview holds. Okay, so remember that puzzle piece that we were talking about, the one with the outside piece, which is reality, and the inside piece, which is the worldview. I want you to imagine that it's like a triangle, okay? This inside piece is like a triangle trying to fit into a triangular slot. Now, each side of this triangle represents something, okay? On one side of the triangle is a belief about God, or the concept of ultimate reality. Another side of this triangle is the belief about human beings and our existence and our consciousness. And another side of this triangle is about nature, about our purpose and existence of the world and how everything got here. Now, what you believe about these three things form your worldview. So with that in mind, how does your worldview answer the following questions? Firstly, origins. What is ultimate reality? And this is kind of the question about God. Either you believe in a God or you do not. What about this? What is the universe and how did it get here? This is an outward question. This is kind of our nature side of the triangle. Or when we move into the realm of identity, who are we? This is more a question about human beings. Are we valuable? Are we the way that we are meant to be? Is there something wrong with us? Or what about morality? How do we know right and wrong? Are things objectively wrong? Or does society determine it? And where did guilt come from? That's very important. Where did guilt come from? Okay, and lastly, purpose. What happens to humans at death? And what is the purpose of humanity as a whole? And now answering all these questions that I've just listed off, that is kind of how your worldview gets formed. And within the worldview of Christianity or Islam or Hindu or naturalism, they all have answers to these questions. Okay, now in a much broader sense, let's break every worldview into three categories or three kind of umbrellas. Firstly, we've got theism, which includes worldviews such as Christianity or Judaism and Islam. We've also got naturalism, which is belief that there is no God and the material world is all that there is. Within this umbrella worldview, you've got atheism, existentialism, hedonism, nihilism, secular humanism, and Marxism. And we've also got transcendentalism, which is that all things are spiritually unified, or it's oneism. Okay, and within this, it includes Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Scientology, New Age, and a whole lot more. So what I want to do now is talk about what these umbrella worldviews or how they answer these questions we've been talking about origins and identity, morality, and purpose. Okay, so let's start with theism, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. How do they answer the question about origins? Where did we all come from? Okay, or what's the belief about God? Well, firstly, within the belief in theism, they believe that a supreme being exists and that he is the ultimate reality. They believe God created the entire universe, but he is not one with the universe. You know, God can and he does interact with his creation through miracles, and he communicates in two different ways. There's general revelation and there's special revelation. Now, special revelation is like the Holy Scriptures. So within Christianity, of course, you've got the Bible. In Islam, you've got the Quran and various other writings. And in Judaism, you have the Torah and the prophets. Now, that is how God communicates through special revelation. And then there's general revelation, which is like creation. And in other words, in theism, we recognize that the fact that we are here in the first place means that there must have been someone who put us here. You know, creation is proof of a creator in the same way that a building is proof of a builder. That's general revelation. Now, within theism, I might say they or we, it's interchangeable as I am a theist. Now, they believe in a natural world and a supernatural world, and that these two things both exist. And we also believe in a personal God who created everything. So that's kind of the answer about how did we get here and the belief about God. Now, moving into identity, what are humans? What's the belief about humanity? Well, within theism, humans were created by God, and therefore we were intended. And if we were intended, we have a purpose. Now, we also believe that humans are both body and soul. Material, which is our physical body, but also a spiritual part of us, right? Our soul. We believe that because we have been made in the image of God, every human being has dignity, worth, and we are valuable, right? Now, within the different worldviews in theism, there would be different levels of acknowledgement that we are made in the image of God and different levels of acknowledgement about how valuable we are. But the point is, there is still that belief. And we also believe within theism that humans are broken by our sin and we are in need of fixing, right? And also that we are immortal, that we continue to exist into eternity, right? Within theism, most of these worldviews will believe in an afterlife, whether that be heaven and hell, or there is various other beliefs, but they believe that human beings will ultimately live forever past this life on earth in a different realm, whether that be heaven or hell. Now, morality. What does theism believe? Theism teaches that God has created us with a conscience, and he has created a moral law as well. He has standards of right and wrong. God's own morally perfect nature is the measure for good. Anything outside of this is evil. And ultimately, when we die, we will be judged by God according to what we have done. And finally, purpose. At death, human beings will be judged by God. That's the belief about what happens after we die. We live for eternity. It's just a case of where. And within Christianity, you've got heaven and hell. Within Islam, you've got paradise, and then you've got the Islamic version of hell. And the purpose of mankind is to know God and to be in right relationship with him. So that's kind of a summary of the beliefs held by theists. So moving into naturalism, that the belief that there is no God, how do they answer these four categories of origin, identity, morality, and purpose? Well, first of all, when it comes to the belief about God, they believe that there is no God, and the cosmos is all that there ever was or ever will be. The material universe is ultimate reality, and they do not believe that miracles can occur because, of course, there is no miracle worker, and there is no spiritual or supernatural realm. Identity. What about us? Who are we as humans? Well, we are evolved biological machines. We're unguided. We're unintended. We exist by chance. Our personality is all really just chemicals. There's no real mind or spirit. Within the belief of naturalism, and this is something that I didn't always know, but ultimately our actions are determined by chemical reactions going on in our body. And in fact, the whole material universe, everything is just chemical reaction after chemical reaction causing us to move in certain ways. And I think this is ridiculous, right? In fact, I was once having a conversation with a friend, and he believed this. He believed that we didn't actually have free will. We didn't actually make any of our own decisions or formulate any of our own words, but rather this was all a result of chemical reactions going on. Now, I highly recommend you do not do what I did, but I slapped him in the face. And the reason was I wanted to prove to him that I did actually have free will and I could choose what to do. So I slapped him in the face, and it wasn't hard, but he got the point. And I said, look, okay, first of all, I'm sorry for slapping you in the face, but do you hold anything against me for what I just did? And look, I'm not sure what he truly felt, but at the time, to be consistent to his worldview, he said, no, I don't. So I said, what about people like Hitler who committed what they did? Do they deserve to be punished for what they did? Now, I can't quite remember his answer there, and I don't want to misrepresent what he truly believed, but the point here is that within naturalism, if the material world is all that there ever was or ever will be, and that every decision we make is ultimately just a result of physics and chemistry and reactions, there is no real identity that humans have. There's no morality, which is our next point. Morality. Where does it come from within the naturalist worldview? Well, ultimately, ethics are man-made. There is no basis for them. They're subjective, right? Or maybe ethics evolved with us, and they might aid us in our survival and our reproduction. And we are guided by ultimately our evolved conscience, not by God. But what happens when you've got two different naturalists who both have their own sense of morality? Who's objectively right? Well, ultimately no one is if there's no objective standard. And finally, purpose. At death, a human being's personality is extinguished and they return into the ground. They become dust. They decompose. There is no afterlife. A dead body is all that's left, and that gets absorbed back into nature through decomposition. In fact, a naturalist by the name of Ernest Nagel, he said human destiny is an episode between two oblivions. In other words, before you were born, there was nothing, and after you were born, there is nothing. And in the in-between stage, that's your life. And that's the belief of the naturalist. And finally, transcendentalism. This is the belief that all things are spiritually unified, or oneism. Okay? So within the origin, how do they believe that we all got here? Well, they believe something which is different than theism, and that's that God is the universe. God is not a personal creator God like the Christian God is, but rather God is more of an it. It's an impersonal force or spirit which is intertwined within the created world. And ultimate reality is the spirit or the mind or the force. And the illusion of the material world is what's called within Hinduism Maya. Basically, the whole material world that we live in is an illusion. And the real ultimate reality is actually this big spiritual world, and everything is actually just part of this spiritual world, and everything is God. Now, within the identity, because the divine is all of creation, therefore, we as humans are divine. We're part of this divine creation, right? Humanity's problem is getting caught up in the impermanent illusion of the physical world, instead of realizing our divine nature. In other words, our identity should be that we are part of this divine world, that we are a spiritual being. And our problem as humans, rather than it being sin like it is in theism, our problem is being caught up in this illusion of the material world. Instead, we need to fix our minds to make them realize that we are actually part of this divine spiritual world. Now, morality. Because right and wrong is part of our material universe within this belief, which is an illusion, morality also must be an illusion. Now, karma and reincarnation come into play as well. Rebirth kind of pays off the bad stuff in past lives, but here's where it doesn't really make sense for me, is that if there is no morality, if it's all just an illusion, and if there's no personal God with a moral standard, then who's to say that someone who's morally evil is going to have a worse reincarnation than someone who may be morally good? Again, if there's no standard, then why should someone be reincarnated as a mosquito and the other person be reincarnated as the next Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and I don't know, maybe be the next millionaire? Where does the standard of morality come from? Ultimately, there is none. And purpose. The purpose of humanity, our goal is to achieve enlightenment and to become one with the impersonal divine mind of the universe. In fact, the goal of life is to uncover the truth and escape the illusions of the material world. And finally, once we do that, that's the highest goal within these transcendentalist views. So that kind of sums up this episode for today. We've got worldviews. What are they? They are a way in which we view reality. And within each worldview, it has beliefs about God and human beings and nature. And further broken down, we have beliefs about origins and identity and morality and purpose. And the three major ones would be theism, naturalism, and transcendentalism. Now think about where your worldview lies. Is it a worldview which goes along with the beliefs of theism, or of naturalism, or of transcendentalism? Or perhaps there's one I haven't heard about, another category here. But in the next episode, we're going to get into how we evaluate a worldview. How do we make judgments about whether they are a valid worldview or not, and whether they match up with the way things actually are in our universe. We're also going to narrow down again and look at more specific worldviews within the umbrella of theism, naturalism, and transcendentalism. Now, before I finish the episode for today, I want to say that I did learn a lot of what I have just presented from Stand to Reason University. And now this is not promotion or anything like that, but I just want to give credit where credit is due. I learned a lot from them, so I highly recommend checking those guys out. But yeah, that is the end of the episode. If you guys enjoyed, if you learned from today, then please make sure to leave a rating on the podcast or comment or share it, whatever you think is going to get it to more and more people. I would highly appreciate that. Otherwise, stay tuned for the next episode in which we are going to get more into worldviews, what they are, what they believe, and which worldview is right. We'll see you on the next episode of The Garrison.